customizers? Welcome to the next adventure at Talking Hands Customs. To all my subscribers, what's up? And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the channel. You've picked a very interesting video to start at, and it's going to be wicked. I was going to make a cat tank, the Sears exclusive 1985 black Mobat with the red cupola, barrel, and wheels. It's a Crimson Guard tank, etc., etc. You can go look it up, it's pretty dope. Because I like making black and red Cobra vehicles. And then I said to myself, why would I just do a straight repaint when we can actually do something super cool? And if we're gonna make a cat super cool, it then becomes the Super Cat. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take a little bit of the real world and slap it onto this tank. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Mobat itself is actually supposedly based off of the MBT-70, which was a German-American combination prototype tank that never went into production, much like the Mauler is based off of the XM-178 or something like that. Anyway, it looks like a cool tank. I love the Mobat. I've done a few on the channel already, so to speak. And this one here just screams, it's like, okay, we could do a regular repaint. And the black with red accents we already know looks cool because it's classic Cobra. But in this case, I wanted to make it even more Cobra. And by making it a Super Cat, I'm not making a replica of an exclusive, I'm taking that up to the next level, and I want to do that with you. So if you're following along, throughout this episode, I'm going to try and move things as slowly as I can, so that way you can pause the video and look at my placement of things. And what you might be wondering is, placing of what? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to direct your attention to these photos. Welcome to Explosive Reactive Armor. Also, applique armor or add-on armor. These things are fitted to tanks. They look like little bricks, and they are exactly that. And they are explosive in nature, and they're designed to defeat incoming tank rounds, etc., etc., etc. So they look cool, and that's what we're all about here. So if you look at this, or excuse me, these photos, you'll see that there's American and Soviet tanks that use it. It's been around for a long time. And you can see what it does to the silhouette of a tank. In some cases, it changes it drastically depending on what kind of explosive reactive armor they're using. So in this case, as customizers, when we look at these photos, we want to look at the patterns to see what kind of things we can accomplish. Because we know that G.I. Joe tanks have some fun built into them, and they don't necessarily reflect real-world tanks. And when we try and incorporate the real world onto G.I. Joe stuff, well, there is some leeway there, as you can tell by a lot of the greeblies that are molded onto the Mobat in the first place. So in this case, what we're doing is we're looking at patterns in the bricks. They're actually different sizes, they can be different orientations, they're almost stuck on individually to basically fill up a space as much as possible, to protect it as much as possible, which means there's going to be gaps. There's uneven gaps, there's different styles between tanks, the same tank can be up-armored different ways, and we're going to use all of that to our advantage for the Mobat. So I've already started, because what happened is I needed to do this one takes a lot of planning, so I wanted to plan where my bricks were going to go. And what I mean by bricks is actually a double entendre for this one. I mean bricks of ERA and bricks of Lego, and that's exactly what we're going to use. You could replicate this with sheet styrene, but you'd have to make clean cuts a whole bunch of times, and without using something like the chopper, take a look at it, you would go absolutely crazy. So, although I heard it's a fun place to be. So in this case, I said, what the heck would be brick size that's smooth? And I went, bazinga, Lego tiles. So for those of you not too familiar with Lego, you can get smooth pieces that don't have the bumps on top to connect to other tops, so it's almost like a finishing surface for Lego. They've been around for decades, and I bulk ordered a bunch online. You just go to bulk order Lego or brickowl.com or something like that. Sorry, I don't remember, but it is what it is. And they come in different shapes and sizes. The one I pictured, which is the one that looks most like ERA, are the 1x2 tiles. I got them all in black just because I knew I was going to paint the tank black, and that's going to help me with painting. You don't have to. You can get them all sorts of different colors you want, because you're going to prime and paint it all anyway. But in this case, it helps show a unified idea for the purposes of the video. So what I did is I took some basic glue, which I just spilled. Pardon for the interruption, I had to clean that up before I drank it. And I held the tiles in place, and, well, I put glue on the back of the tile and put it on the hull of the tank. Now, the philosophy I used behind my spacing, because we have so much choice, maybe you don't know where to start, is I want this to look like almost as if Hasbro took the original mold, added this stuff to it, and then re-released it as like a super exclusive or whatever, a HasLab, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And then what I chose to do next was make sure that the tiles fit roughly within the section that I applied them to. And what I mean by that is they didn't hang proud or stick out above or below any of the panels that I'm about to put them on. With one minor exception, during my experimentation phase, the corner of this brick here goes up just a little bit, like a millimeter, even if that. Millimeter for my American friends is a really, really, really small part of an inch. Okay, cool. So, because you could change orientation and everything else, I experimented with pattern. And what I did first was I took some of these tiles, and I just put them on there loosely. I sat the tank like this, and I put them on loosely. Okay, the spacing is going to work, great. And then made my choices, which is why some of these are angled down to match that slope at the top. I wanted everything dressed off of this slope up here. Because what I'm doing is that because the spacing is going to change throughout the design, I actually wanted to introduce that element onto each facet of the vehicle itself. So that way the eye would get used to it and you wouldn't have four almost separate styles of ERA attachment to basically make it look more cohesive. But like you've seen in the photos, the freedom you have is actually quite excellent. The other thing I did is that I wanted to combine styles. I liked some of the Soviet style, I liked some of the style on the M60. So I'm using a combination of both. And not to worry, because I've only done this part of the tank so far to confirm that the process would work. And we are going to do this side together. The other bonus about having this freedom of application for these tiles or ERA bricks, I'll use the term interchangeably by the way, so just hang tight, is that the Mobat turret is asymmetrical in and of itself, so we get to get a little creative. If you've never seen stuff like this before, you might want to pause the video here and take a look at a bunch of tanks with ERA. And you can just type in tanks with ERA and the search engine will take you the rest of the way. Just to get used to seeing it, because maybe you've never seen this stuff before. I've seen it quite a few times being a model builder. So yeah, just to get used to the concept. And some of you might be wondering is that because we're losing this sticker real estate with some of these tiles, especially here where you can put stickers on these side skirts, is I created a specific pattern right here to put my Cobra emblem. Okay, so there is some planning that went into it. Overall, I would say about 2 hours just positioning tiles and making sure things would work. I took some photos of each section as I did it to use as a reference and to modify if coming down to the gluing point that I would actually change the design a bit. So I've done all that work for you, so if you want to follow along, no problem. Just pause the video throughout and then place your bricks in the exact same space. And I am going to explain as I go along. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so before we dig into putting the tiles on the tank itself, let's get into some orientation here about the kind of tiles we're going to be using. So for Lego, it all goes by how many studs are on top of the piece, and it measures it almost like a piece of wood, like a 2x4 or a 2x6. So this one here is a 2x3. Okay. The one we'll be using the most of is a 1x2. But we will also be employing 2x2s or squares. And most usefully, 1x1s. And that will allow us to make our specific patterns. Remember back to those pictures there. They come in different sizes. Some of them are actually, the ERA bricks are actually purpose cut to certain facets of a tank. We're not going to do that because we don't have Lego like that. If you did it with styrene, you could do that, but I wasn't too worried about it. It just gives you that freedom for however you're going to make your project. So I wanted to stick with this. The glue that I spilled unabashedly is regular Tamiya cement. It's a brush-on glue. We'll be using it sparingly. The reason why I'm using that is because the super thin cement dries super quickly, and I want a little bit of working time before it does anything. Don't use super glue with this. I've heard that it will actually make the tiles or whatever Lego pieces you might be using brittle, and then over time they'll crack and break and destroy, and we don't want to risk that. So just regular old model glue, Tamiya cement. There are other brands I'm sure that will work. That's just what I'm using. And yeah, let's get to it. You're going to notice that this is going to be maybe a little bit of out of order of a usual build. I don't have it disassembled yet or anything like that. That's because of what we're doing. Having the tank still on its treads is quite helpful. It keeps it from hitting the tiles or anything like that, and it lets you see spacing and overall aesthetic while we work. Because aside from doing the ERA tiles, that's not the only unique thing we're going to be doing on this project, but more on that later. So what we want to do is get our spacing set. So what I want you to do is take your tank and put it up on its side just like this. Mine's not going to necessarily stay there anymore because I've tiled the other side, but it should sit something like that. And then you're going to pick your area. And I'm just going to pull some tiles out here, some 1x2s. And we're going to array our tiles the way we want. And all I did was, there we go, look at the area to be covered. In this case, I took one of these two panels because they're the same size and shape. And it'll be the easiest ones to do because in my pre-measurement for selecting the 1x2s, which was a rough estimate that worked rather nicely, it fits 9 of them in there. And yeah, let's see if we can keep it up on its side here. Give me a sec. Let's try that. And then what you got to do is just throw some on there and see how that spacing works. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see there's these little cutouts in between from the corners of each plate, and it forms a little tab. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist, or that's our line, and we're going to treat the bottom of this skirt as the part right by the separation seam here. I know that sounds like a lot, but just kind of mirror what I'm doing there. You should be able to see that green line underneath. You can see that it fits 3 across rather nicely. And then checking the rest, if we do some okay spacing here. And when you're just placing for idea, you don't have to be super precise. The other tile, the other one that's going to be placed, is the upper corner one. And you can start with the bottom row or the top row, it doesn't matter. Because they're both going to be dressed off each other. You can see there's 6 already, and it leaves quite a nice row for the last 3. It's not perfectly straight like I said, it's not a big deal right now, we're just testing. Of course I'm butterfingers now, but that's okay. I mean, it won't be during the gluing phase, but... And then I need one more 1x2. There we go. So we know that 9 will fit in there, and that's how I figured out my spacing. So there's 9 tiles. Yeah, they're not straight, like I said, we'll straighten them out there, but the point is that you could mess around with your spacing however you want to do it. And that gives us a nice grid there and some nice unique strips of these tiles. And we know that this one will work the same, but this one won't because it starts to angle down. So we can get these two done. The best way I found to do it as far as order of gluing to ensure straight lines, without using tape or markers or anything like that, is to actually do the bottom or the top row first. If you're not sure about your spacing along the bottom, then go along the top. In which case, put one in each corner first, because the tile is going to be close to the corner. I put mine in just a little bit from the seam line, the vertical seam line there. And then place the third tile, and they're going to be flush with the top of that skirt. And then you can put the bottom row in, do the outsides first, and I have the edge of the tile just over top, and basically you're going to line it up with the side of the top tile there. And then you can put the bottom 3 in. You can even put the second one there, and then the third one in the middle to be done. A slightly overly complex thing, but once you start doing it, you'll see what I mean. And when you see me do it, you'll see what I mean. And then what that does is it allows you to build a grid like that, okay? and we do one of these at a time. It looks like all these bricks on here, right? But if we break it down into parts, right? Any problem we have, we want to break down into smaller, simpler problems. So how do I line up all these tiles? Well, we start off with one section. How do I line it up within the section? Okay, we'll find the hard edge. It's almost like when we were landmarking stickers, right? You figure out how to match the stickers on both sides, figure out what lines up with what. It's the same thing, except easier with these tiles. So why don't we dig on into it, and let's get one of our first little panels done here. All right, I'm gonna prop this up here just so you can see what I'm doing. Something else you might want to employ is a pair of tweezers. Depending on, maybe you got the larger hands or you're lacking some motor control, and that'll just help you place them and push them around. Even if you've got smaller fingers or whatever, this actually helps with some alignment, because sometimes your finger is just too much of a tool to use, so you got to use you could use a hobby knife too if you wanted to, but tweezers are good. So let's get in and let's get one of these panels done together here. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna take, and I'm gonna start up in this corner up here. Actually, I'm gonna start at the bottom and show you what I mean. Let's be bold. Okay, so I just put some glue on the bottom edge of the tile. Then I flip it over. And I know from our placement practice that it's going to go just on the corner where that little cutout is, just past it. And there, it should sit just like that. Okay? So here, pause it here and take a look and copy the same thing. Okay? Now, I'm going to put one in the other corner. I'm just going to brush some glue on there. Now I'm going to go in the other corner. Same space. And if you want to set this up with strips of tape so that you're 100% perfect or whatever, you go ahead. So now it's on there and it's starting to set, but I've got a little bit of time to make sure that it's nice and even. Relatively speaking, right? We're not going to get too worried about it, right? And my third tile, I'm going to brush some glue on there, just around the edge. If you're bulk ordering this stuff, it's from Brick Owl, and the cool thing about that site is that it actually takes you to local sites within. It's like one big repository of Lego buying sites, and I went through Brick Owl, which took me to a place called Bricks Bonus or Brick Bonus. It's one of the shops in Canada. And it let me order through there, and it does all over the world, so it's not just North America. So if you're from somewhere other than North America, hi, and you can get this Lego from anywhere. And like I said, it doesn't have to all be the same color. So there's our bottom row set. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the top row. So again, brush some on, and just a little bit, right? Cover the whole ridge, but don't feel that you have to smear it on. And these are black, so you might be wondering, well, why don't you just put them on after you're done painting? Well, I could, and I don't have to paint these tiles, but I want to match my textures, right? So right now these textures match because they're both unpainted plastic, right? It's just dyed plastic, but I'm going to have to paint this black, so I'm just going to do the whole thing anyway. But your choice, do what you like at the end of the day. So now what I've done is for this tile up here, is I've made sure it's flush with the top of this armor skirting here on the side, and that it's in line with this brick here. It's not that hard. You can compare, right? And if you use tape, that's fine too. Not a big deal. Don't stress out about this. You can remove these. I had to remove one or two because of placement issues, and it's just fun, especially if you just placed it, and you're good to go. So next brick. And now you've got this row, so you could do the middle one if you want, or you can do the corner one. So let's do the middle one just to prove a point. Make sure that's nice and flush with the top. Yeah, pretty good there. And I touched it a bit with my finger, and that's fine. It leaves a little bit of a fingerprint, it's marring. So you might have to sand that down, and that's okay, right? It's no different than if you accidentally, I don't know, get your fingerprint on anything else. And we'll get the next one on here, just like that. Same idea. flush with the top. And in line with the bottom. So some of you might be going, well, why didn't you do it this way? Why don't you do that way? You can do it any way you want. This is just one way to do it, right? Now we're going to do that middle row. And all we're doing now is just putting them evenly spaced between all the tiles. And you could have built it, you could have done an L shape and then build it out and over and up or whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. That's the way I did the other ones. This is just one way to do it. Just one way to do it. Pick whatever works for you, right? Like you can follow my tile placement, but if you have a different rhythm of applying them, then by all means go for it, right? That's the beautiful thing about this, is that sometimes steps matter, like you gotta prime before you paint, but other than that, do what you want. Get the second one in there. And this one, like the tank's on an angle right now, and these tiles are not sliding down because the tiles are super light and the glue is good. So, yeah. And maybe some of you build a lot of Lego, and maybe you've talked to Lego store employees when they build their displays, they glue them as well sometimes, I've heard. They use white glue, whatever. But you don't want to do that because they just do that to hold the building in place, whereas these are being held by the glue itself, so something like model glue is best. And there you go, look at that. See, we've done a whole skirt of ERA bricks. Okay, so now that you've seen me do the fresh bricks on the other side, I want you to copy this pattern exactly as it appears here, but on the other side. And it's just the same thing over and over again, right? Landmark the outside tiles, inside, whichever way you like, and then finish the rest of that side skirt, and we'll carry on with the turret. And that's looking really good. So now what I'm doing right now is, because I'm starting to get some ideas, modifying my plan as I go, I'm looking at how many of these single 1x1s I have left here. And I have quite a few. They go quick, but I still have quite a few left. But overall, I have this construct here to worry about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start replicating this. I can replicate this on the other side up to about there. And then that's where things get a little different. So we will have symmetry up there because the greeblies match. Yeah, the greeblies match all the way up to this little bump out hatch thing. If you're really into tanks, bear with me while I screw some of the terms up. And then I already have a plan for what to do here. It's going to look neat. But anyway, let's carry on with the turret. All right, now replicating this is easy because everything is landmarked or lined up against something. The problem is that this IR searchlight's in the way. So it's going to be a little on the fidgety side, and that's fine because we have our tweezers here. If we need them. So let's get that sorted and we'll start building. Oh, here we go. So exciting. Like that. So the same process, right? Glue on the piece, line it up on the turret, line it up on the turret. This one's fighting me. And then we check. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. Oh, but it's not stuck. So see the glue dry too quickly? We'll just go ahead and re-glue. Then I just came up with a cunning plan. Now that you've seen this process, I'm going to go ahead and mirror the other side. So you've seen everything here, right? So this one here is centered on that panel on the very bottom. So it's centered and flush with the bottom of the turret. This one's over a little bit, flush with this one and centered in its space. Then that's directly on top of that one. This one is in line with this one. It's not in line with the top of the turret. So now I'm going to reconstruct this on the other side. These ones here are all pretty much stacked to be in the center and fill that triangle up. These ones are pretty self-explanatory and carrying on down the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tile these up off camera until we get to this cupola Mark II hatch thingamabumpy bob, and then we'll go from there because that's what's going to be different. So we're going to carry on here. You do the likewise thing, and we'll see you in 2 seconds. And magically we are good to go. So we've brought the turret up to this L shape here, this little Tetris-y looking L shape on the other side. So we're symmetrical, we're good to go, everything's even, Steven. Hey, Tetris, that's exactly what we're doing here. We are playing Tetris, just way, way slower. But anyway, now we're gonna deal with this shape here. All right, now that you've mirrored the other side of the turret up to this point, for that little cupola bump out there, all I want you to do is place a 1x1 and then 2 vertical 1x2s around that outer edge, and you'll see that the shape will work rather nicely. Then you're going to finish this side off with another 1x1, go to the back of the turret, and put on 3 evenly spaced 1x2s, just like that, okay? All right, let's make a flamethrower together. So, styrene tube, that's going to be your friend here. Same overall idea as what we did for the previous 2 Mobat projects, the Sky Mobat and the Tiger Force Mobat, in that you're going to take the same diameter of rod that fits over the gun port. In this case, I took 2 diameters of roughly similar pipe, whatever would fit when they were stacked vertically would fit inside the tube without warping the larger tube. And you get this as a result. There we go. Okay, because now what I want is the longer tube is going to be up top, because we're going to do something a little special with the bottom tube, which is why it's shorter. It almost looks like a shotgun, which you could leave it there if you wanted to. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a simple paper clip, and I am going to cut off one piece without really bending it either. And I'll show it to you like that, right? So there's the paper clip there. All I did was cut it with a pair of needle nose pliers, right? It's got the cutting function right in there, for those of you not too tool savvy, which is totally cool. And now what we have is that little, piece there that's like the pilot light, right? So this is where the flame comes out, and it'll go into the lower tube. And because we're not too worried about realistic functionality, what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it in there so that it sits exactly or close to like that. And what that'll look like is it will look like a legit end of a flamethrower. I'm not too worried about it being out here or being out there, because even if you look at the detail on Blowtorch's flamethrower, the figure, you'll see that it kind of snakes up to be just at the edge of the tip, so you don't get any tip breakage or anything like that, so to speak. So in this case, the idea is to create the idea of it where if you looked close enough to it, you're like, oh my god, it's even got the little pilot light thingamabob, whereas not actually worrying about realistic spacing. And that's the thing with everything that we're doing here, is that you're taking something real, like the tank itself, the ERA, the add-on armor, whatever you're putting on, the flamethrower, and you're making a version of it that looks like a toy. So and that gives you the leeway to not worry about millimetric measurements and all sorts of stuff like that. As long as it looks like the business, you're good to go. All right, so I'm going to get some glue in there, and we are going to get that in. So give me 2 seconds here. And the staple is metal. Could you use a plastic? I think there's plastic staples or rubber coated staples or whatever the heck it is. Yeah, you can use whatever you want. The point being is that you are going to need to prime it. And Vallejo primer is supposed to be good for that, but just keep that in mind. Now you're working with multiple types of materials. So I got glue in there. And I want to create that gap. So I'm going to make sure that this, you'll see what I mean in a sec here. It's just a little bit of fiddly work, so I know it's going in and out of focus here. Just bear with me. I think that's good. As long as it stays vertical. And this is that finer work that's going to take that patience, right? So I'm going to manipulate it. It's a little off right now because I just moved it, but now I'm going to manipulate it so that it stays dry. And then all we're going to do, like with previous constructs, is we're going to fill those in. You could cut thin styrene to fill in, like act as a cap for those gaps. I'm just going to slam putty in there and sand until my fingers go numb. But we're going to fill this up and then dress it off, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so while our flamethrower is setting, you might have noticed something. We didn't put any ERA blocks back here. Why? I'm glad you asked. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add fuel drums. I've already taken two 1/18 scale, G.I. Joe scale, World Peacekeepers, whatever you want to call it, scale fuel drums, and I've glued them end to end. This is another trait of Soviet tanks and a couple of Western tanks, where they have extra fuel drums on the back of the hull that extend the range of the tank. Just like, it's almost like a fuel tank for, like a drop tank for an airplane, right? Except not remotely aerodynamic. So what I did is I came up with a quick design, and I'm going to tell you how I did it, so not to worry because I've already cut them both out because I got excited, so sue me. The key to getting one of these done, or two of these in this case, is a circle template. Now, if you have the same kind of drum, I'm going to save you a bunch of pain, and the diameter that you need to cut this to is 25 millimeters. So all I did was I took the 25 millimeter circle here, and I put it on a sheet of styrene. And then the good thing about a circle template, at least this one, it's made by Stadler, so you should be able to get it wherever Stadler products are sold, I guess. I don't know. They're not sponsoring this video, by the way, just kidding. It also has these 4 hash marks here that allow you to bisect the circle or whatever. So all I did was started building out my idea from this circle with the crosshair through it. And what that got me to was basically this shape on paper. And then what I did was I cut it out with a Dremel. And then when it came time to do the circular bits, I put a grinding wheel in instead of the cutting wheel. And I just ground out the plastic until I was happy. Then, because we're all human beings, or at least I claim to be, I put both pieces on the barrel like that, and then what I did was check to see where they were different, and then I evened them out. So the proportions were rough estimates. My cutting with a Dremel is not the best. And then I smoothed them out, and then I also rounded off the edges. Remember we talked about G.I. Joe toys, while they have clearly defined edges, they're not sharp, but if you work with styrene, you get a lot of sharp edges. So I just rounded it off with a sanding stick on all the different angles and stuff, and now we're good to go. The reason why I chose the dimensions I did, and you may want to orient yours the same way, is that, let's see if I can get it back here. So I don't want to go below this part of the hull here. Where's my pointer? Yeah, I don't want to go below this part of the hull, and I don't want to go above this line here. I'll see if I can highlight it with the light. There you go. So you see this bright spot here? It actually angles inwards, almost like the tweezers look like this. So you don't want to have your brackets on an angle because it won't, I mean you could if you want, but why would you want to do that to yourself? And also you want to make sure that the styrene that you put in there doesn't interfere with the tank treads. In this case it doesn't. So what I did is I used that line just before it cuts inwards as the top of my bracket, and I wanted my drums to sit right on the corner of the tank, like a lot of the pictures I've seen. Some of them, they actually sit right over top of the back decking, so don't feel like you have to, like mine are going to sit basically like that, but you can have them straight up over top. It's all up to you. By the time I get these glued on, I'll show you too that with the cannon collapse, there's absolutely no interference with the function of the turret either. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to attach the fuel drum brackets, and then we'll carry on. Alright, so let's get these glued on here. Again, I'm using the stinky glue, but it's the good glue. Super glue could work in this case, however. I like the slightly longer working time of this stuff. All I'm doing is I'm butting it right up against the tank. Leave zero guesswork. There's the one. I'm just checking to make sure that it's good to go here. Sometimes this stuff's hard to do on camera. There's the one. Let's get the second one on here. Yeah. It's just fighting me a bit here. There we go. Now we got our brackets on, and they actually look pretty cool even if you don't have the tanks in there. They almost look like a little, almost like claws or something like that. It's pretty cool. And the reason why I use such thick styrene, like I said, is that, you know, if these get a little knock or something like that, I don't want them to break off, and I want them to look like they were put on there purposefully as a modification to the original mold. And it will provide a strong place for the tanks to sit. And there you go. Construction almost complete. We're going to build a battery cover for the bottom of this thing, but other than that, there's your modification. Now, if you wanted to, from here on out, once I finish the battery cover, we're just going to paint it up. But if you wanted to do October Guard with this or something else, this is where you part ways and go do your thing. Speaking of which, I did say I was going to try and find that Russian armor green color, but that's what it's called. It's called like Russian armor green, and there's Soviet armor green or whatever. So if you want to do October Guard, this whole thing in that color, you're styling. But we're going to be doing the Super Cat here, so. All right, let's wrap this episode up because this is going to be a multi-part series. So what we've done is we've added ERA bricks to the entire tank, and I have gone ahead and I've done the glacis plate as well. So if you want to pause the video right here, then you can mirror this pattern. And all I did was place lots of 1x1 bricks here with a couple of 1x2s vertically. Don't forget to put a brick there and a brick there, and what that does is it helps bring the ERA visual up into the turret itself. We have covered this tank with ERA bricks, taking into account the asymmetrical design of the tank itself. We've constructed a flamethrower, and while longer than the original laser piece that goes up there, does not impede the function of the turret whatsoever. Then we took two 1/18 scale drums and glued them end to end. You can make this with the same diameter, or whatever diameter you want really, of plumber's pipe or PVC pipe, whatever you got. And then we constructed some fuel brackets and attached them to the rear to complete that Soviet era tank look. And this is going to be the basic end of the construction phase. So I hope all of your projects are going extraordinarily well, whether you're following along or not. And I want to say thank you to all my subscribers. And if you are joining us for the first time, maybe give a like and subscribe. And stay tuned for the next episode at Talking Hands Customs. In the meantime, be safe and have fun.